It's been a minute, but I really wanted to make sure to do a vlog before I go on vacation next week already. It's been kind of a hectic past couple of months getting back into a routine with exams and just a lot of other things. Here we go back into reflecting on teaching. So, like I said, it's been a crazy past couple of months, and I've been trying to document as much as I can. I have been staying on top of some practices like recording daily lesson plans, daily learning objectives, sharing those with students. But again, trying to get into like a more consistent routine has been a little bit more difficult for me. With that said, though, I wanted to focus on active learning because that's something that I've been working toward achieving a lot more of in my classroom because for me, I'm in almost my 10th year of teaching, and direct instruction is an important part of teaching. However, it's not the most important part. Direct instruction can often veer the way of passive learning, and with that, students don't really get a lot out of it because they're not developing personal meaning, they're not getting a lot of experience, they're not developing a lot of skills. And so, to start off, I just wanted to talk about what active learning means to me, along with some of what I've been doing for research around this area. Active learning is where students are engaging with material, whether that is with the content or with skills and the practices of experts in our fields that we teach. So, doing things that a scientist does, or what a mathematician or historian, and so on. And with that experience, they are working with their misconceptions, but deconstructing them and producing, ultimately at the end, misconception free understandings. Active learning engages students with their critical and creative thinking skills. It is also a collaborative process where students are working together through discussion and teaching each other reciprocal teaching. Students also, during active learning, reflect on their own learning itself and what they've been doing, what they understand, how their thinking has changed. It is student centered, experiential, and it is problem based learning as well. And with that, lessons do use those upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy so that students are synthesizing, analyzing, evaluating, creating in the process of their learning. Again, I've been working on trying to build more active learning experiences into my classroom this year, and so I just wanted to talk about different ways that I've accomplished that. For example, I have been flipping more lessons so that students are mastering certain things outside of class so that there can be more active experiences in my classroom. This has only been possible because I've been a lot more explicit and routine in writing my learning objectives so that I can identify those concepts, content, or skills that students can work on outside of class and then practice using in my classroom. Some of the reasons why that works is that it helps with defining a clear outcome, selecting the right kind of assessment, defining what exactly students need to produce or what I am looking for in that assessment and what I will be evaluating. It really does set measures for success. I've also been changing my seating arrangement a lot in this current marking period. I really like my, typical, my normal seating arrangement because it does allow for a lot more flexible grouping, a lot more flexible seating arrangements. With my 10th graders, I do give them assigned seats, but those change on a daily basis, and I'm constantly mixing them up so that they're working with people that they might not normally in other classes. With the seating arrangements, I am able to change the desks around a lot more easily based on the type of activity that is happening. So, for example, this is what it looks like during my direct instruction days, and this is what it looks like when I'm doing more flexible grouping based on readiness, trying to do mixed level groupings for activities, exercises, to make the learning in my classroom a lot more meaningful and active. With the seating arrangement being like this, I am able to have students really face each other and look at each other so that they can have these much more deep, meaningful discussions. Some examples of active learning that have been happening in my classroom over the last several weeks include around with my 10th graders in our cell respiration unit. For example, really getting them engaged in developing skills and giving them opportunities for practice and being able to receive comments and feedback to improve their performance, knowledge, understanding, and abilities. That's been the case with, for example, creating data tables. An area of improvement that I've identified within them is that they don't understand how to design them. They don't understand how to fill them in or use them. And so I've been working a lot over the last few weeks on teaching them like everything there is to know about data tables. I also have had them work in collaborative groups based on their performance with those data tables to collect data within the cell respiration lab itself. I also have gone back to a more kind of tried and true learning strategy with doing jigsaw readings and allowed my students to do more reciprocal teaching with concepts, so that way they're not just having to sit and listen to me speak, and that way I can provide more individual and small group instruction to groups based on what I'm seeing of how they're participating with each other, or how they're collaborating with each other, listening in on what they're saying so that I can identify those areas of trying to help them improve. In each of my classes, I have been working on doing a lot more on-demand writing. And so when I teach them a specific, for example, command term or a Bloom's verb, such as distinguish, I've been able to talk a lot more about what that means and how do we build a response around that verb. I've been seeing a lot of improvement in my students' writing abilities as a result of that, so that's good. Something that I have done quite a bit of, though, is doing simulations with my students, whether those are digital or analog. In 11th grade in particular, we've been working on a unit with molecular genetics, and there have been a lot of opportunities for simulations in there. For example, I had them do a digital simulation about PCR, polymerase chain reaction, and use that as an opportunity to build their conceptual learning about this technique that's used from our knowledge and understanding about DNA replication. The other two simulations were analog, so with paper, but it gave them hands-on experience with really walking through the processes of DNA replication, transcription, and translation. The one that I did with DNA replication was a lot different than what I've done in the past, because I had them first construct a DNA model using these paper cutouts and then walked them through the process of DNA replication. And after certain steps, I interviewed them, and this is the outcome. What are the 3 parts of a nucleotide?
The 3 parts of the phosphate, sugar base.
What part of the DNA molecule does the tape represent? The covalent bonds. And the covalent bonds are found in what part?
In the phosphate sugar bond.
What type of bond is between?
Hydrogen.
What is the orientation of the 2 strands?
They're anti-parallel.
How did you know what the order of the bases in the daughter strand would be?
Based on the bases here, because T goes
on
with
the
A.
template of the parent strand.
There are many challenges that I do face, though, in my attempts to make my classroom a lot more active with the learning that goes on. For example, there are a lot of time constraints. 45-minute periods is not a lot of time to fully develop a concept and engage students with the material in ways that are differentiated to meet all the different learning styles and ability levels in my classroom. The school calendar is also a big challenge for me because there's not a lot of consistency with it. On top of it, it's difficult to find time to plan these different types of lessons and evaluate student performance so that I can do these more flexible groupings based on ability levels or interest. And on top of it, the marking periods are only 6 weeks long. So with losing class time, there's other Ministry of Education requirements that I need to meet, such as a certain number of marked assessments, and that's just a lot of things to try to balance within a short amount of time. As far as challenges that I'm faced with the students themselves, it comes around that idea of differentiating instruction, especially based on student readiness. With a lot of the things that have been happening around school, it does act as this kind of like the push to my pull with developing a culture of powerful learning in my classroom. However, I've found with the use of my daily learning objectives, as well as the flexible grouping, when my students are arriving to class, the amount of time for transitions and to engage them into the lesson has decreased a whole lot, and so students do come into my classroom ready to learn, but I do have to fight against these institutional challenges. There's also a great deal of content challenges that I'm faced with. For example, in the diploma program, there is a lot more emphasis on the content. The diploma biology curriculum is it's very much like memorization focused and very content driven, and so there's a lot of things that students need to memorize as far as discrete content, discrete words, discrete processes that might not easily flow one right into the other. So when it comes to this balance of lecturing versus application, content versus skills, I do struggle with that on top of teaching 4 different levels of biology, which ties into the 4th challenge, the teacher challenges, my own personal challenges, that I do have to balance these 4 different levels of biology. And so I do feel pulled in a lot of different directions. And on top of it, I'm the kind of person that really wants to feel like I'm an expert and that I'm competent in my abilities and knowledge before doing something. So I spend a lot of time researching, and that in itself takes quite a bit of time. But then looking at how I can convert my already existing materials and lessons is also a challenge too. I guess what I've been taking away from all of this is that I do need to just keep trying. I need to keep on persevering through these challenges and look at them as opportunities to think creatively. I also need to recognize the gains and improvements and positive changes that I've been making in my own instruction and my own pedagogy, that it is showing that it's being better for student learning, and I feel a lot more positive about my teaching abilities than I have ever in the past. It is okay to feel like I am struggling a little bit in this or that I am facing these challenges, but I do need to recognize that those are my feelings and my thoughts and not let them influence my behavior or my actions in a very negative way. They are opportunities for growth. They are opportunities to think of creative solutions, and I know that over time they will accumulate as a lot of positive changes, as a lot of positive improvements in my practices, in my abilities to teach, and the learning in my classroom will only continue to get more active. Thank you for rejoining me for reflecting on teaching. As I said, next week I leave for vacation, so when I return back from it, I will begin posting on a much more regular schedule. Have a great rest of February.